So hello there. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we are here in group of four, and we have Jurgen. We want to talk about Jurgen's talk from 2019. Why most organizations should ditch Scrum. We have like Jacek, we have Richard, of course we have Jurgen. And let's start. So I have a question, because like listening to this to your talk, I thought, what was the context? What was the source of your idea to do this talk?
It's not really an idea. The source of this talk is the source of my frustration. And as you probably are aware, frustration is a good energy source for change and doing stuff. So my frustration was in many people coming back with, I started with Scrum in 1998. So, and back in those days, you need to explain what Scrum could be, an iterative and blah, blah. You had actually good implementations. These days, if you are getting asked to support organizations or anything else, everybody knows Scrum. But yeah, by practices most probably, and we need a flat list, and then we plan everything, and we need to get to done and blah, blah, and all of that stuff, but actually wrong. And I have seen Scrum being so used to abuse teams, really abuse and force people into things that they don't want to be, getting into a negative spiral. Okay, it becomes mainstream. We need to accept that some things go wrong and all that stuff. Then again, I have felt and have seen the beauty of Scrum. And I would be very disappointed to see it being, going wrong and disappear because of wrong implementations. I think in my talk, but I don't know which one you shared. So because I did this talk a couple of times, it's been recorded a couple of times. So I also mentioned this. Most probably I'm Don Quixote in this thing, so I'm fighting windmills and it will die. But at least I give it a try. So the basic principles and the thoughts and the purpose behind the events will most probably stay. It will be called differently most probably, but the same things are still there. We need to have shared learning on product level. Otherwise, we cannot work on this thing. We need to have shared learning on execution level or the ongoing work, because otherwise we cannot collaborate. So the purpose behind all of those things is universal. Unfortunately, yeah. Scrum is being used as a project management tool to get the illusions into reality, and then things go wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I like the exercise at the beginning where you said how many people have experience in Scrum, and and then you're like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and I thought like that. I think there are probably plenty of people that have plenty of years doing Scrum, and they never, experience real Scrum, because that was like bullshit interpretation, like mechanical zombie Scrum.
Well, I would never say it's a bullshit implementation. It's just they look at Scrum from just a single perspective.
Yeah, like
you can look at Scrum from the perspective of process and practices and techniques, and that's where it most probably will go wrong. Or you look at Scrum and you say, okay, my perspective on Scrum is empirical process control, inspector depth, and actually the key element, transparency, and all the rest is optional. So it depends which perspective you put first, I guess, if you try an implementation. Similar things with less, by the way. If we're with less candidate trainers, if you think about less as a bunch of practices, roles, and process, then most probably it's going to go wrong as well. You need to think, if you look at if you take a different perspective on less, and you take the less complete picture, for example, as the perspective to lead, then you will see the principles are within the framework and all the rest is outside the framework. So it's all about the principles and the way you think about the reality instead of the practices. So, and depending on which perspective you put first, you will most probably end up with more impactful change, or less impactful change, or even harmful change.
That's something I think Craig talks about. That if we don't agree on optimization goal with the head of product or with the company, like forcing Scrum or less can make more harm. And for example, better to focus on, for example, technical practices in that context. Like
a similar exercise, not with the experience, but that was specifically targeted towards what you were wondering about, Sebastian. So I first asked the people on in the room how many of them were working in Scrum, and then I asked how many of them are working in increments where they deliver value and they make decisions on what to do next based on the feedback from that value. And that was like pretty much the entire room versus literally nobody. So it's what you would expect, I suspect.
Yeah, exactly. So Richard, so what are your experiences with this?
Oh, +1. Organizations get crammed down to use Jira. Jira supports Scrum. Scrum equals using Jira. And it's just a vicious cycle. You ask them what the Scrum values are, they look at you like, I don't know what button that is. What is the Scrum values button in Jira? they think the only thing non-Jira that has to do with Scrum is the daily stand-up. Right? Everything else is a Jira thing, and it's harmful. And I know Scrum.org, we've been making some overtures to Atlassian to help them understand what is professional Scrum, which, you've got your terms: zombie Scrum, flaccid Scrum, dark Scrum. Jurgen, what's your favorite term for that?
I just say bad Scrum. Whatever.
Bad Scrum, yeah.
So,
and that's judgmental.
Yeah.
So with Scrum.org, we don't use the word Scrum. We say professional Scrum to basically mean what Scrum should be, right? With the adherence to empiricism and the Scrum values. So you're right. I mean, our best customers out there don't want anything to do with this because they already know Scrum. So you've got to hit them with a sledgehammer, like your talk, to tell them to stop doing what they're doing. It's not Scrum. It's not helpful.
Well, they don't need to stop it. They just need to rename it to what it really is. Status meeting and so forth. But please keep doing it. If you think it helps you, then go ahead. But please don't call it sprint review and daily Scrum, because it has nothing to do with this.
Agreed.
Yeah. I think how annoying is when people think that they know Scrum, as you said, Richard, based on Jira and other stuff, and you tell them it's not Scrum, it's not real Scrum, and they say to you what you are talking about. We know Scrum. You don't know Scrum. And it's it's crazy. It's crazy town. Yeah. So hello, Danish. We have another structure for this meeting. We're doing podcast / interview, something like that. So if you have any questions and want to join the talk, please do. Okay, and another question. I was wondering why you said you are a bad manager, Jurgen. You said something like this, back in the day, I was a great developer. I know software patterns and other stuff. Organization wanted to give me more money and to do this, they had to promote me.
Yeah. And then you become a team lead, but I didn't know anything about leading a bunch of people. I never educated, never read about something similar. So, but this is the only reason I said, okay, maybe I'm a bad manager. Or actually, I didn't say I'm a bad manager. I just said I didn't know how to. So I reached out to, well, at least I tried to figure out materials, and I tried to find design patterns on how to lead a team of people. I was like, if I actively applied design patterns as a software engineer, that's when I became really good, or better. Let's call it like this. Even today, I would even call myself, and back in the old days, not even really good. But anyhow. So it's like, but I got better with design patterns. It's like, yeah, there must exist design patterns. And that's when I went looking for design patterns, I came to Timebox and other lots of reading materials, but I didn't have really the time to go into the reading materials. And that's by accident. By accident, I found a 2-pager Scrum back in 1998. So it was like, yeah, this must be easy. It took me 4 years to get the first thing really working. No, it was not that easy as I expected it to be. But anyhow, but I had lots of fun.
Do you still would consider yourself a bad manager?
Not wow, I don't know. I think manager, most probably. Leader, no. So because I grew at a certain moment in time when we were acquired by Agfa as a corporate environment. A bit later, I grew from a team lead to being a part of management club of 5 sites in Europe and close to 500 people in 8 years time frame. So there must be something good about it. The fun part is I was doing this part-time. If you organize your own organization pretty well, then you don't need to be there that often. You need to work with your peers and your manager, and the higher you up you go into the food chain, the less you see your peers and your managers. And if you ask them for some time in between, they don't have to, they are too busy. And then you're sitting there, I'm not busy, yeah, the organization is running. So then I started working part-time.
I would go deeper in the organization patterns, because sometimes I'm thinking like, that's like for example, pattern of having dependencies in a team. That's for example, technical pattern of like not like coupling, for example. Like I think there are many similarities in like technical patterns in the organization patterns. What do you think about that? Do you have any like similar thoughts about it?
Go, Dinesh.
Oh, okay. One of the pattern I like is the delegate pattern. So whenever I have done a manager role, so I have done head of development, head of engineering role as well, development manager also in the past. And one thing I have tried to do is that, who do I delegate to? Who's the best person to answer this question? So having that network is very important. So what I've done is, so a lot of time, whenever, and it's very important to build that peer network among yourselves, because the 2 things there. One is that you truly believe that you can't solve all the problem, or you're probably the right person to solve that problem, right? But you should know who to go to, who to talk to, right? And in organization, you would find people are brilliant. They may not be technically brilliant, but people side, they are very good people, and they can actually take care of the people. So whenever somebody has come to me, I say, okay, that's an interesting question. I think the best person is talk to that person, because if I had this question, I would go to him, right? And it doesn't mean that that person has to be higher in authority or lower in authority. He or she is the right person to talk to, or the person is the right person to.
So to go back to Sebastian Hesting, so you became the BPMN engine. Yeah.
Okay. I am the probably Kafka request response, right, kind of stuff. So I think, and I think what it does, it does few things also, that you are not taking too much on yourself, so you don't become a bottleneck, right? And also, at least with this pattern, what I found that 90% things get resolved, because you are pointing to someone who probably the best to deal with that, so they would advise, and then and that way people would talk to you more, because they wouldn't come to say that you must have answer. I have answer, but I have the answer that someone else has the better answer than me, so go and talk to them. And often what I do is that when I ask people to go someone, I also listen to the conversation. How do they deal with that? So you're not like in the delegation also, you're not judging anything. You're just learning also there that how do people handle that, so that in case you have to handle it, you can use that experience also, or you could observe those things also. So I think that's the one pattern. I whenever I go into those managerial or leadership position, more managerial than leadership, to be very honest, right? I use that pattern.
Richard, do you want to add something?
Nope.
Short and simple.
I've got another question. If nobody wants to add anything to this thread, in terms of taking this approach of kind of noticing, also I assume other people's frustration with bad Scrum, whether they know that is just bad Scrum or they don't, and trying to use it into like building more consciousness of what good Scrum should be. Have you noticed any patterns of where that works better or where that works worse, be it different company cultures or just different cultures?
I think one pattern that I have always observed, that people do not believe or don't have experience in empiricism. They don't believe in empiricism. And then they see Scrum as a process than anything else, right? So they still want to get stuff done, get shit done kind of stuff, right? Get me done quickly. So nobody bothers whether you're doing the right things or not. I mean, at least on those organizations, they just want, because people get rewarded. It's like a systemic issue. People get rewarded of how fast something you have done. How would that behave later on, or whether it form on the production or not, that's a different thing, because if my work is done, right, and that I get rewarded. But so I think, and to be honest, 90% organization, at least I have worked, are just saying that get that done, get this done. I mean, that's why, I mean, people sell it like that. You will get twice the work in half time, those kind of things, because that's what people started believing in also, especially if it comes from somebody who actually created Scrum or had higher influence than us. So people will go there. And I think that's the pattern you would see, that is very few people understand empiricism, take it this way, or believe in it.
That for me, it's like emerges the other thing from the talk about agility, and you know that only IT needs to be agile. Like delivery teams need to be agile, not business. Business is already agile. It's like these pesky developers that are not agile. And I thought, yeah, like probably they are not agile because they have like technical or organization depth, and to like that was forced by business people. And you know, and like when you have like 10 years of technical depth, it's hard to like do something, you know, agile, in agile way.
In that context, you were asking like which cultures can you get into really the empiricism behind Scrum and which not. And to build on Sebastian, his answer, like if the business and C-level or executives or the managers you work with in certain departments, if they understand and truly believe we need to listen more to our market trends, sales trends, customers in that sense, that's where it starts working out. If you have somebody that is higher up in the food chain that thinks like we are first in market and we demand where the market is going to, then this is not going, that's where it's not going to happen that quite often. Back in 2008, I guess, I worked for 4 years also as a lean startup coach in an early incubator here in Belgium. And that's where you see the people really benefiting of it. So really believing in it and understanding the real meaning behind everything, and then go into uncovering better ways, by the way, because they are not stuck in a list or this or that. Like in the startup world, our product backlog was basically the validation canvas of Ash Murray. So, but this is good enough, and then you move on from this. So
I think
So if you say culture, then culture where people somewhere like higher up, or at least enough of the body in the organization understands we need to be able to adapt and learn from our deliveries. Learn what is the effect, the impact it brings on the users, also on the market, on the sales. So.
What's the percent of the companies you were asked to, like, coach, and after starting the coaching, you smelled the bullshit, for example, and what and they don't want to really learn from the delivery or something, and you resignated, said fuck off. I don't want to do this anymore.
To be honest, I think my data set is not big enough, because I was 16-year employee in the same company, 12 years doing less adoption. So, and then after that, the first client I had, I actually fired because they didn't want to do the organizational changes. My wife was very scared because I emptied my bank accounts to make sure that I could start as a self-employed person. So, and then this company had this reputation of going 3 months and then another 3-month contract and another 3-month contract, blah, blah. So the first 3 months we worked with 5 teams, they grow, they went better. And then the second 3 months I was poking the system to see if there was some abilities to really change the stuff that was needed. And then when they came up, this manager, I said, Jurgen, I want to extend your contract. I said, yes, but I poked the system. There is no intention, or at least I don't see it. So there's no use, because if I keep working with the team members, they will become smarter and all your good people will go away. I don't want to do this for you. So unless you want to do the change, and I misinterpreted the signals, and they were like, nah, well, actually, we want to do this. Okay, then I signed. Yeah, after summertime, I just gave the contract back. I say, call me back after summertime. I never heard of them anymore. After that one, I think we went into an insurance company, which actually went great, because there we ended up with having this real button, and then cruise control, by the way, on the server in the marketing department, where they push the button. So the marketing department could push the button anytime they wanted, and at that moment in time, the product was being put into production, including the launch of their campaigns. So this, I think, is a great achievement. Unfortunately, those people don't want to, well, actually, none of them is still available to actually put it out there in the public. After this one became Base Company. And Base Company is a case study now being published, so it worked pretty well. So after Base Company, I did Barco ClickShare, which I use in my trainings, by the way, which is hardware and software. I can use it in the trainings. They didn't have any other publication. Then I think you know about Ysoft. You know about the Governmental Institute of Pensions. And today I'm working in an electricity and gas distribution provider here in Belgium. They are okay-ish. So most probably somewhere next year, they can also go on stage and show you a bit more on how to, in a highly political PMO-driven organization, how to start with less. They already grew their product definition twice, from 3 teams to 6 teams to 9 teams. So I think this is also not that bad. But I select my customer, Sebastian. And when I stopped being an employee, I said, I will not go somewhere where I consider not being able to generate impact. So my main driver is finding the customers and even waiting for the right customer if necessary. But these days, it's mostly selecting the right customer. It's just like on impact, the possible impact that I see we could deliver in a couple of years. Because all my customers, I think none of them, I stopped working with them within a year and a half, 2 years or something like that. So I don't have those customers going in like 2 months and then go out. Well, except of Avast. Avast is the Czech thing. So there we just did internal training. So we trained about 30 to 40 people, and then they did a less huge adoption all on their own. The fun part is there was a PhD student making her thesis there. So it's been published publicly on in 100-something page English page document on how it went. So this is the shortest time I have been with the customer doing a less adoption.
So how it went?
Well, they called it a success in the PhD. They also put out some things that was like, okay, they warned us not to do it. We did it anyhow, and it didn't really work out very well. So but you know, read the paper. I think it's amazing, just with a bit of training.
I always like heard you know, like every transformation I heard about, it's a success. How is this, you know, possible?
Well, it depends what you define as success.
Without...
Success is very irrelevant. So one of the things, for example, in Barco we had is that the product director, he actually WhatsApped me later on. He said, we validated a disruptive business idea at 1/5 of the cost we would have done before. For me, that's successful. Is it successful for Jurgen? Most probably not, because they went for a business idea that was not feasible. So this is the difference. If you look at Wysoft, the CEO went on stage in the last conference saying, okay, we had 400% growth. And then he immediately added as well, it also shows how bad we were before. But anyhow, so...
I try to make a joke because, you know, if you scroll like LinkedIn or something and you see like posts about transformation and other stuff and adopting Agile, you always see like success stories. There are like no like in my feed, for example, there are no like lessons learned or something. Yeah, it's like always success story. The bigger the organization, the bigger the success.
It's not always a success story. Base company, we turned around into a less huge, and it went very well, by the way. But they ran their organization with a simple Google Doc at a certain moment in time with 177 lines in their backlog. This is the overall product backlog. So 7 areas, 177 lines in this backlog, and that's it. So they were acquired. So they were on the market. They were being acquired by a different group. And then they need to defend to the CEO of that different group how much change they went through, because it was not what he saw after everything was okay. And the initial, before he started buying, was completely different. We keep changing. So if there's lots of months in between, it's indeed different. And then he could not believe that the full organization, including a multi-million contract with Tech Mahindra, was being steered by a simple Google Doc with 177 lines. So this was too far away from his reality. He killed it completely.
And also success, nothing is static. So organization, sometimes you do, so one of my case study that I have written, right? It was a success story. And after, I mean, if I go and talk to them now, it's a horror story, because they have come back, because most of the people who were doing, because the organization inertia came, right? And then try to first take the credit for that. This is politics, right? And to take the credit, they joined that organization, which means they pushed other people out, and then they killed it as well. Say, hey, what rubbish are you doing, right? Who works like that? Even though they knew that something which they thought would bring the 20 million has brought 400 million, right? So that was the success story for the organization. But now they have a product they can sell. So they go back to the old typical project management style. And I still talk to the people there. And then, so it's very dynamic situation, because the change of personnel has a direct impact on that, especially the people who believe, and for a lot of people, I don't blame them, because they never had experience. So it looked weird for them to say that, how can you expect a team to take a decision? It's the management to take a decision. That's what their responsibility is all about. And we only had like, for 200 people, we had like 2 managers, and that also to sort out the logistics, nothing else, right? Not like telling people what to do, or taking some HR thing or other corporate stuff, not directly involved with the program. But then suddenly say, hey, there are no managers, so they brought 20 managers for 200 people, and then that got killed. Take it this way. They still have a product, they're still selling it, so they would still claim it to be a success, but they don't see how that the whole transition had happened to actually build that product. And sometimes when you have built a good enough product and it keeps selling, you think you're successful, but they don't understand that how far you could have gone with that. If you're still getting 400 million, for example, then probably if they were still doing same way, then they probably would have got $1 billion. They're happy with 400 million, because that's again a success for them. and I see that as a failure. So it's very, very subjective also. How do you define such a
It's like, you know, when you see table and ask people, so in what stage is this table? And they say to you, like, this is like a, you know, solid. And if you like think about table through like years, in probably 100 years, this table will not be solid, in solid state.
And I think the question about dark Scrum or Scrum, I think it's less relevant in my opinion. Is it serving the purpose? Is it helping the organization? That is more important there, right? Rather than following just going too much into it. Say that, right? So if your organization, and when I'm saying dark Scrum and the real Scrum, what I meant here is that if people start doing Scrum, right, and it doesn't brings the value that they should have done, right? I'm talking about team level, right? I'm not talking about organization level, right? Then I have seen a lot of good team who are practicing good Scrum gets beaten by the bad system also. So there it becomes a problem. Scrum becomes a problem, which it shouldn't be, right? And I think that real discussion doesn't happen in the organization. So if you take it to more, I think there's a I think Craig wrote in his book why people get picky about Scrum is not because they love Scrum anyway. That is to say, because the people don't understand the principle behind the Scrum, right? That going back to the empiricism, right? It's not that they want you to make sure that you finish daily Scrum in 15 minutes or you get penalized, because that would be dark Scrum if you take 20 minutes or 16 minutes, take it this way, right? So
imagine now, Dinesh, starting today as a newbie in Scrum. So I started back in 1998, so there was not that much material. So you went to Ken Schwaber and that's it. So this is about it. So you immediately get like good information. If you start today with Scrum and you just Google like a book in Scrum and any kind of language, you get gazillions.
Exactly.
So what kind of Scrum are you going to listen towards? And maybe you start to understand there are a couple of gurus running around. But which guru are you going to follow now? Because none of them agree anymore. So this is also one of the things I think is causing this confusion in the world of what it should be, or could be.
Well, how many of your organizations even know the Scrum guide exists?
Yeah, to be honest, Richard, with the update, I don't even give it to them anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's like famous example in Poland that the third book, the less third book is the title of third book of less is translated to something like how to do big projects in Scrum.
Project management, yeah. It's like the title has project management.
Yeah. It's like,
Come on, people, you had one job to translate that book correctly.
Yeah. Maybe they had component teams for the title and the contents or something.
So Jurgen, I'm wondering why you don't point people towards the Scrum guide.
I will try to keep it short, otherwise we are going into a rabbit hole now. So my main driver in this, Richard, is I've been in my past as an employee part of what I consider a really high-performing team. And in my more than 20 years experience in the software development industry, I have only seen 3 that I would call high-performing. And this kind of feeling that you get in this kind of high-performing team is amazing. This is something I will never forget, by the way. And then we see, for example, in the current Scrum guides that the real team actually disappeared. So it's called developers, and there's only one concept of team, where you have a product owner, where even the Scrum Guide said they are shared amongst amongst developers or teams for developers or whatever. So having this kind of high performance where I have been part of and have felt this thing, this with a shared resource or a shared person in thing is never going to happen. So, and only this for me is already good enough to say forget about it. There are more reasons, by the way, but this is for me already like the main part. And for people that never experienced this kind of high performing teams, they do not understand. They are like, yeah, you are overreacting. All the people that are saying to me you're overreacting have never been in a high performing team.
I would just remind you that the Scrum Guide is not for those 3 teams. The Scrum Guide is for people at organizations trying to figure out what the heck Scrum is.
Yeah.
So this might be another call down the road, because I agree losing development team was a shock, because that's my background's in development as well. And I was the one that created the professional Scrum development program for Scrum org. So the fact that they got rid of that inner team, that, you know, the nucleus of getting work done and forecasting and all of the, you know, the how, really hit me sideways. I'm just glad they didn't go full crazy and call them team members, you know, or makers. They stuck with the developer word. So it's a little bit of a goodness there.
Jason.
In terms of the, like, very similar usage of the Scrum Guide to what Jurgen did in the talk that we were like referencing, I used to reference the Scrum Guide quite a lot in terms of the very well-defined parts of Scrum that organizations were not doing well, mostly in terms of team structure. Because in the previous Scrum Guide, it was one of the very explicit points, and it was super useful, that within the development team, which then existed, you do not have internal roles, even complete with examples that you do not have architecture, you do not have front-end, back-end, testers, whatever. You do have the skills, you do have the competencies, but you do not have roles that go with these competencies. It's all shared within the team. And then they let go of that, which is a damn shame, because I found that super useful with every single company that I worked with. All the companies that claim to be doing Scrum that I've seen actually have a lot of these internal roles, even in what they consider to be development teams. So losing that kind of felt like just avoiding the topic altogether, because it's too controversial to talk about, but it's the most useful one for me. So I stopped using it.
It's even worse, because it's not about software product development anymore. It's about doing complex work. So it's okay to have Scrum in your business analyst department. It's complex work. It's okay to have Scrum in your HR department because it's complex work. It's okay to have Scrum in your architectural department because it's complex world. So, no, anyhow. So you see the rabbit hole.
I pasted the quote from current Scrum Guide, and I think, Jacek, there's still, you know, the sentence about no sub-teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you can say that the tester is a part of the team. They just do the testing, but we're a team. It was a lot more explicit and a lot more useful in the previous iteration.
Yeah, that they called everyone developer, no matter what you were doing.
Yeah, like the cohesive unit of professionals can be a unit of architects, as Jurgen says.
Yeah.
Well, there are things that are good in the new Scrum Guides. So let's be honest, like they put the empiricism a hell of a lot more up front. So this I do like, but they also added more practices. Now you need a product goal. So, but maybe a vision is more appropriate. Maybe your North Star metric is more appropriate. So, but now putting a practice over there makes it less agile, in my opinion. Because if I put a practice there and people get stuck, they don't try to uncover or experiment with new and different practices anymore. So yeah, there are pros and cons on both, but
that would be an interesting question. Like if this group would write Scrum Guide, which practices we would cut from the Scrum Guide and still keep it Scrum?
So I wrote a Scrum Guide.
Late.
So yeah, that's my question is what then do you use as a rubric for Scrum? 2017 Scrum Guide or your own thing or what?
I keep referring to the 2017.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I do have my own, so it's in the chat.
So Jurgen, what's going to happen let's fast forward a few years. Ken passes away. I'm gonna go extreme example here. And then Jeff owns the Scrum Guide, and the Jeff edition comes out.
Yeah, fantastic.
The Byzantine Empire will shatter into duchies as well eventually.
Man, I'm telling you what, I like the idea of pinning it to the 2017 guide. It's just, I can't do that as a trainer. I gotta stay current.
Yeah,
I feel you, man. You're independent. You can roll that way.
Yeah, but you know, if people come to me and the Scrum Guide and they quote some things, I will have a conversation, but then I will go back to what I think is the essence, which is also in the talk that was here in sent forward. So, and I go back to this and I say, and all the rest, to be honest, you might care about it, but I don't. And then we move forward.
I have a strong feeling that we would have we would fork Scrum by end of this year. Or mid of next year, we would have at least less organizations would say this is the Scrum that we refer to. I mean, we still say that. I mean, training, the first thing we say, this is what not in less, which is in Scrum, even though less is Scrum, but less is not Scrum also. There are two contradicting principles, right? So this is the difference as well. But I think I have a strong feeling that in next 6 months, Bus would fork the Scrum from Scrum Guide and then say this is what less can be did. We have discussed it many times, but every time I hear him, I feel that Bus is going, even if it is lightweight, it's not too different. But I think I like to believe that it would happen sooner.
I think there was also talk about, because of the Creative Commons license that was chosen for it, you can't just claim that there's one Scrum. So you can have less B Scrum, but still not the origin master head Scrum of 2020. It's just a different Scrum, but it's both still valid.
Yeah.
Will that, I thinking that will that make, the Scrum even worse? Like, because I can imagine that SAFe will have their own Scrum guide. Atlassian will have their own, Scrum guide that will have, like, you need to use Jira to have professionals, like real Scrum.
They already have. They already have, to be honest, right? They already have.
This is all okay, because we are doing less. So we are not going. We just use less. We don't explain what it's less. So and this is it. So we will become the extreme programming of scaling stuff. So we will never die. We will always be considered good, but be never popular as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's funny when you hear people list, popular frameworks. It's Scrum, Kanban, XP, and some people will still throw in Crystal. And I don't think I've ever met any shop anywhere ever that used Crystal. But yet it's always listed with the others, just like at the same level. So how do we become the Crystal? Let's even go bigger than XP and go somewhere where no one even uses it, but we're still mentioned everywhere.
This is a nice challenge. Yeah.
I don't think that makes much of an impact then.
Oh, impacts, darn it.
Depends what's your definition of impact. If you want to like be, part of the history and being mentioned a lot.
But even considering how rarely XP is actually used as XP, it does have a tremendous impact. So even if people often don't really use or don't go full on with the practices, they do. The understanding of them is mostly present.
Yeah, and so far every person who has ever been on an XP team remembers it as a great experience.
Romanticize, the past.
Yeah, I mean XP again. Nobody uses as XP as XP. So you're saying engineering side of XP rather than the whole iterative development of XP. Not that. So engineering side, yes, because I started with XP in 2003. That's how formally I got introduced to Agile, something called Agile, right, that way, in 2003. And but we were not doing the XP practices. We started with, say, hey, let's continuous integration, test unit development, pair programming, those things we started. Not like you must have iteration manager, those kind of things. I think so I think even when people start referring XP, they are referring more engineering practices side rather than the XP as a process.
About the boundaries and what should be in the Scrum guide, that was also an interesting question about Jurgen's talk. It was included in the Agile by example video, I think, where one person asked, what if the team does mob programming like regularly, and if they decide to skip the daily Scrum while doing that, is that zombie Scrum or bad Scrum or whatever? So this is a nice question, because now we're talking from the perspective of people who don't necessarily have a good grasp on what Scrum is, and it's difficult for them to tell which of the stuff is superfluous and you can reject, and which of the stuff is super critical. It's interesting that this might be one of the things that I think would be the least controversial to make optional, because it's not really always required, right?
Well, if I actually mentioned this to people as well, if you do mob with the full team day in, day out, then you don't need sprint planning 2 from less. I don't say it with Scrum, I just say from less you don't need sprint planning 2 because it happens continuously and organically. And you don't need daily Scrums because this kind of shared learning within your team is also continuous. So then again, yeah, look at how many teams are actually doing mob programming day in, day out. As a full team, yeah? Not as a bunch of people, but really the full team. And if you don't mob with the full team day in, day out, then you will need the daily Scrum to have this transparency and shared learning ongoing, so that you can still collaborate across different mobs maybe that you have done within your team.
So I don't even call it mobbing unless it is the whole team. It's like that word's reserved for the whole team. But I will add one thing, just Jurgen, just to consider. It might be nice now and then to push back from the keyboard and just assess progress towards the sprint goal. That's still something important for a daily Scrum. And it's a time box, so it takes 2 minutes and then you go back to keyboarding. That's all.
Yeah, I would also like imagine that if you are doing mob programming, like, all the time, like 8 hours a day, you are probably doing the activities of daily Scrum. So you are having like the daily Scrum, but not as a dedicated event. No.
As far as planning, yes, but assessing progress towards the sprint goal, which is a big piece of it, maybe not. I mean, the mobs I've observed are just so heads down working on activities that they lose sight of the forest because they're in the trees.
Yeah, Richard, one of the things I mentor when I go into organization, and also put in my last trainings, by the way, no stretch goals whatsoever.
No.
Not on the sprint planning, not in the definition of done, no stretch. So basically, if you have a 2-week sprint, you plan for 1. So basically, the progress, we should always have a green light. So it always should be like, yeah, we succeeded our sprint. Why? Because in the other part, so most probably the last couple of days, they are like, yeah, there's nothing in our sprint plan anymore. Yeah. So, but this is great because now we can start to experiment how to get more of the undone work done and progress in that direction. We can clean up some of the misery we had from past project pressure related environments. So there's so many other activities that you can clean up. So so in that sense, it doesn't really make, it's not that important to stop and see, do we hit our goal, yes or no? It's important in sprint review, do we hit our outcomes, and did we generate some impact on the outcomes, and what did we learn, and how we need to adapt vision and strategy accordingly. But during the sprint, maybe not that important. I'm not even I'm thinking about it because I never thought about it. So, and I'm one of those less trainers that actually does educate about sprint goals.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
well, I would say I've observed teams, not very often, who can achieve a sprint goal without working through their forecasted work. It's not a thing that, it's not natural. But mobbing, your heads are down, you're working on tasks, PBIs, da 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 da. And if you're like, wait, what was our goal again? Oh, our goal was to make the overall experience, faster. Could we do that by this? So just having a dedicated time to think about the sprint goal and not the code or the tasks or the PBIs. Just that's all I'm saying. So that's when I coach mobbing, I say, hey, find some time to push back and just talk about the goal. And then you can get right back to work again. 2 minutes, it's a time box. But otherwise, I say you don't really need it. I'm with you. Jira tasks. Yes, Sebastian. Always about the Jira.
Because when this is like my bias when I like hear tasks, I always think like that software developers say always like task is Jira task.
Yeah, I know. I use the T word because I'm constantly teaching newbie teams that are
Keyword.
what's a plan? What does it mean by a sprint plan? I'm like, let's just call those tasks for right now. And then I feel like somewhere a unicorn dies because I said that. Yeah, Bus blew my mind when I sat through his training. He said, well, why can't your sprint plan be a diagram drawn in a certain color? And as you complete the work, you change the color to green or to red or from red to black. Have you heard him explain that before?
I've worked with the team where he saw that.
Yeah, I mean, that's powerful stuff.
This is what I learned from Jurgen. You told me to try this, but I don't know why this often it happens. Like,
can I share my screen?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I cannot at this moment. Oh, no,
Try now.
No.
So maybe Bus got this from Jurgen, huh?
No. Buzz is doing this already for a longer time as well, but I also do this for a longer time. So to give you, like, if we have a daily Scrum, we want to have the full transparency on all the work happening. So people are adding diagrams, adding things, but not only that, like this team is making the meeting notes on the sprint backlog. So if one or two persons need to go to some meeting somewhere else in the organization because it's a large thing, then they just go. If you look at this team board, this is the sprint backlog. So you see they are adding data files to it. They are adding more test files related to sharing this kind of information. So if they think it's going to pollute our sprint backlog too much, then they use their playground. So here you see they have a playground. If they think it's not relevant or not relevant enough for the rest, then they use a playground. So you see even mock-ups of screen they put in there.
Sure, yeah.
This is cool. Enabling collaboration. This kind of task boards are definitely not. So
very visual.
So and then during the sprint, they keep adding information, throwing information away, which makes it what is relevant, not relevant. Sometimes they even put JSON files in there to show this is different than we expected, and hopla. So this is for me like already normal since my employee career in Agile back in 2003 or something. So, but if you think it's a Jira task board open with Tom, then you're fucked, of course. Yeah.
No.
Hi guys. I just want to share one thing. I started working with a bank now, and we tried to use this approach. I mean, to use kind of like a component diagram or whatever diagram, engineering diagram as a sprint backlog. After 2 sprints, developers said, "Oh, we would like to try also some different ways of creating sprint backlog." So they chose to use Jira, and I said, okay. So anyway, one of the if you use it, if you must use it, at least go like feature by feature what's happening, and then you make a plan, or maybe you have a discussion around what do you want to do today to deliver something useful, so the feature. So they did twice this, and then I disappeared for 1 sprint, and when I came back they said, oh, we decided to change daily Scrum a bit, so now we are just discussing who did what task. I was like, why people do it? I mean, what is the root cause that they consider going task by task instead of even if they tried drawings and component diagrams before?
Because it's very simple, Christoph, because collaboration is hard. True, real collaboration as a team is difficult, and people tend to go with the path of least resistance. So if I can put a collaboration in a tool so that I know what to do and you know what to do, and at the rest of the sprint we don't need to collaborate, that's what I'm going to try at least. So the benefit, and this is why I like Bas's talk during the less conference, for example. So in this case, you really need to jump in and start working with the team, showing them what true collaboration could look like, because this is something most teams do not understand. So I'm pretty sure, Richard, if you do the mobbing as well, most people don't understand mobbing, what the benefit could be, and they think it's stressful. Well, it's not need to be stressful. So being in the team and teaching this will help them to get into the true collaboration, and then they will not go back to putting this thing in a process anymore. But this is not coming naturally. You will need to mentor and teach this.
The team I worked with that did the backlog, they did also have a phase of experimenting with not Jira, but like a digital product backlog where they would have virtual cards. They tried that for like a sprint or two, and then they thought it sucked because they can't arrange things as much as they could, and they went back to the whiteboard. But I'm not sure also, Richard, if Bas told you like the second part of that story, when he visited the team again. Okay,
no.
So I can share my
Jira.
Yeah, no, it's pretty okay actually. So this is the backlog. It's on Bas's blog post about the digital backlogs and like physical backlogs. So this is like the original one, and you can't really see the text, but these
this is it. I think
post-its, they actually have a description of what's to be done. They have like an estimate, and they're pasted around the parts of the diagram that they reference. So when they're done, this is like the to-do section. Then when they're done, they're taken to the next section. But then a few years later, like 2 years later, I think Bas was there again, and the team was still team. But they had a backlog, and so they had like a diagram again, but they had sections which were labeled 1, 2, and 3, and they no longer had sticky notes here. They just like had this division, and they just had like a standard backlog with post-its, and the post-its were 1, 2, like through like 12 or whatever. So the team just decided in the meantime that this is too much text and this is too much writing. You can just gather what needs to be done from the diagram itself, because it contains all the information, and they're too lazy to just like place redundant information there. So the takeaway from this was how much freedom you leave to the team when they have a physical space to interact with, when they can just choose how their own backlog looks, and also what a healthy team approach looks like in terms of owning their process, because it's not like they did this because someone told them to. It's just it keeps evolving, and even if it goes to a weird and silly place, it's something that works for them. So that was a really fun team to work with.
Would you mind putting that link in the chat?
Oh yeah, sure.
I would also blame like single specialists in the team, for like going toward like Jira and tasks, because you cannot have like I think that's my like bias or something, that if you have like single specialist and this single specialist is not open to like like learn other stuff or consider other stuff as also valuable, you're gonna have hard time to introduce collaboration, I think.
Yeah,
because
it inherently creates multiple queues, waterfall, and borders for collaboration and for self-management because of that.
It's interesting if you see that this sprint backlog as such. It is, if I understand and remember correctly, no way Scrum says that you must have to do in progress done column. It says that, say, your information radiator, right? Use it as a, so whatever helps you use that rather than you must have to do in progress or done. It's never mentioned, and really I don't know why people just started using to do in progress.
Because we have a PSK training now.
Who? Sorry again?
No, because we now have PSK training, so we need to have a kanban board.
Yeah.
Waterboarding everywhere.
Sorry.
Kanban just without whip limits.
Yeah. Yeah.
The most
that-
simple part of it.
Yeah.
How does that
Similar
Kanban
to-
board look when you're mobbing? I've always wondered what that would look like. The mobbing Kanban board. It would be very boring, wouldn't it?
It's always just one post-it.
We need the Agile comic guy to, I'm sure someone here knows who that is, to draw up. Here's your board. Here's your Kanban board with a, you know, a safe team, with a Scrum team, and with a Kanban team, you know, and then with the mobbing team, and it would just go down to nothing.
Because I remember just like the similar board, one of the team that I worked, they used to use, it was way before Scrum, I think it was again 2005, 2006, that in that team, what we used to do is that we used to have this diagram design, right? Say this is what, I mean, we did not have a concept of sprint or even iteration. It's like, say, hey, this is what we need to do in this week, let's understand. And we used to draw together, design together. And then what we used to do is that for every item, right? What we used to use the same color-coded post-its, and we used to put up the diagram, say this is green, this is. So if somebody sees that, they still can see, even though it was not meant for anyone else anyway, because if somebody else comes see, they won't have any clue what's happening there, right? Mostly think technical. But as soon as everything was done, we just say, okay, this change is done, this change is done, this change is done, and then that was it. There was nothing like in progress or done kind of LMS that say, hey, this thing is done. And we used to have like a task also that time I was working in Java, like a method name. This is what we need to change. This is the class we need to create, right? So our task name was like that only, nothing else. So we say, yeah, this done, I've done that. So I think in 2006, somebody from our team, I think our manager went for Scrum training. And he said, we should discuss it. So the only thing he came back saying, we should discuss what we have done at everything, just one thing in the morning. No other thing in the Scrum, just that's it. And then so that was my first introduction to Scrum. I was like, okay, it's something called Scrum. And then when I went my CSM in 2007, and I said, that's a completely different thing than what daily Scrum is all about Scrum, than the whole Scrum. Yeah.
So Jurgen, another question for you. Are you seeing organizations go back in person in Europe, or are they all still doing over Zoom or Teams?
I will use the organization I work with today, because 9 teams, and the ones that started back in January 2020, well, actually in November I started, but the real thing started in January. We mobbed together, we did some things, they learned how to really collaborate. Now the office policy is like, the company policy is we need to be 1 day in the office per week, and that's about it. But they have offices all over Belgium, by the way. And those teams really go back to the office 3 to 4 days a week. And the recent teams that we added in end of April, beginning of May this year, which are not really truly collaborating yet. They are like, yeah, we need to go 1 day in the office, but they don't say that we need to be as a team. So I go to this office, you go to another office, and we stay remote working. And this I find pitiful. So the thing is, when I worked in the physical location with those people, they had problems with their procurement for bigger screens to actually really do some good mobs. So I bought them and I put them in the office. And then you have somebody behind you going like, and it's like, what's going wrong? And they start nagging about the problem or the bad code that they have to touch from somebody else, of course. So then it's like, yeah, maybe you can do it together. Let's go to the big screen. So, and then suddenly somebody stands up, gets a coffee, and they join in. This is like accidental. They join in, they look at the screen, it's like, yeah, we're trying to solve complex problems. Maybe you can support and help us out. Boof, you're with 3. And suddenly, if you're with 3, there's another person sitting there. Hey, what is happening? Like, okay, number 4, and off you go.
It's cool.
And in a remote world, this kind of accidental growing of this thing is not happening. It all needs to be intentional, and this makes it a lot more difficult.
Jurgen, have you noticed that the team who were co-located before the pandemic and they were mobbing, did they carry on mobbing when they moved to remote as well?
Yeah, but they didn't continuously mob, by the way. So they did it more for the more complex things and things like that. So, and they kept on doing it remote as well.
I think that, you know, the teams that don't want to, you know, to go back to the office or like have a, you know, be at the same place at the same time are the teams, you know, that don't really collaborate, don't work as a team. And that's why, you know, for them going back to the office is pointless, because I you know, I assume like most of the time they don't do like team working.
This might be part of the reason, I guess. So if I look at now many connections that I have are still from the startup environments, then many of the startup grow-up organizations with a very good culture, they also go there, and they are not really necessarily truly collaborating as a team, by the way, anymore. So I don't know, teamwork and good teamwork might help, but I think there's a hell of a lot more factors playing a role in this context. I also see here in Belgium, at least in the Netherlands, most of the organizations do this kind of mixed thing. 1 or 2 days in the office and the rest remote. And so full-time office is pretty exceptional still.
I've also seen additional difficulties for also teams that actually would like to go back to the office, or where most people would like to go back to the office. Even if there's one person who doesn't want to, just for logistical reasons, because they live far away and now they know that it's a possibility to not spend an hour driving each way. If they stay at home, you don't really get the full benefit of the team there. So maybe you get some organic communication, but you essentially sub-team the potentially working team by having the co-located part and the remote part. And it's really difficult to get everybody on board with that. Even though it's pretty common for people to notice the limits of remote work at this point, and not just for teamwork even, but also for communities of practice, for discussing complex topics like organizational strategies and optimization goals, etc.
Yeah, what we observe in our company is that there are people who return to the office even voluntarily, even when they do not have to, and people who haven't seen the office for the 1.5 years. And it doesn't respect the team boundaries. Like in every team, there are people of one or other kind. So we recently discussed that, and we concluded that especially for product groups with multiple teams, it'll probably end up the way that there will be a different structure of the team. There will be teams that will be fully co-located, and we will just move all the people who want to go to the office there, and there will be teams that will be fully remote with all the consequences it has, like worse collaboration and so on. Like just not to lose the people. Yeah.
I always think that you know, like Jurgen is doesn't have like strong feelings about remote working. Remote working is bad. I don't know if this is like true.
Oh, because in February 2020, before the COVID hit Europe, I was asking for a full remote less environment. So I was of the impression I have skills enough, experience enough to pull it off. Then a couple of months later, I got it by accident. And I still believe I have the skills to pull it off, but not as effectively than co-located.
Okay, that's because, you know, in some point of time, I thought, you know, that you are not not like the biggest fan of collocation or something like that. But that was my interpretation.
No, the thing is, you need to keep experimenting and trying to uncover better ways.
I've
You
heard
go
it
and look
before.
you go and look for a misery that you didn't have before, so that you can uncover new stuff.
I need to go, guys, now. So good to see all of you.
Okay, thanks for doing it. But yeah, there's a lot of limitations that the pandemic introduces or changes, so you kind of need to take that into account as well. Even if things are not going to work as well as they would in a co-located environment.
But there is always going to be, always, not always, but many implementations of large scale, you will end up with some kind of dislocated structure anyhow, maybe not within the team, but across teams. Ysoft, 3 locations in Czech, Brno, Prague, Ostrava, voila, there you go. If you have review sessions, multi-team refinement sessions, then you will need digital support and some ways to deal with it. So the same thing base company when we did it. So the majority of people were sitting in Pune, India. So yeah, and the rest here in Brussels, Belgium. Okay, yeah, you have to do something with it. The similar with Barco. Kortrijk here in Belgium, then somewhere in Romania and somewhere in Thailand. So that's where I got lots of and also my own healthcare past as an employee. We were at 5 sites in Europe, so yeah, we also had to deal with it. So that's why I have lots of. You might have the impression I don't bother that much about co-location because I've always been in situations where I had to deal with large distances between teams, not within team, by the way. So this is recent.
So, like, the team is still collocated, but there could be like no collocation between the teams.
Yeah. This is, to be honest, I think for almost all of the things that I did, except of the Governmental Institute for Pensions, this was always the case. Teams in different locations.
Mm-hmm. So why is the government case is different?
Because they were all sitting in Brussels. In the same office, the same office, but different floors, but anyhow, it's easier.
What about remote working? In this building, this is do they are like collocated whole time, or
They used to be collocated all the time, and with the COVID, because of regulations, they could not. So, and now they had a month and 1 month and a half that they were free to choose themselves. Where I heard that most of them go really fully collocated again into the office. It's also very easy to travel to, by the way. It's you step out of the train, you walk for 100 meters, and you're in the building. So this makes it a bit easier as well. But it's going to change because COVID is kicking in again here, at least in this thing. So it's getting worse. So, and this governmental institute already went like, okay, you know what? Even before it's regulated or obliged, go work at home again. Oh, okay.
I have a question to you, Jurgen. Do you, if you, I mean, your teams, do they work? How do they work remotely? I mean, if at least one person works remotely, then the rest of the team also must use one computer, every single one, or you experiment with groups, with one camera, subgroups, whatever.
So either you have very good equipment, like I think, I'm not sure, Christoph, but I think you have seen the Barco ClickShare, how they did the dislocated refinement session with people in Kortrijk and people in Pune, where there was a movable screen with a Logitech camera, which they could turn around, zoom in and out from the remote location, but it was standing as a team member. It was not hanging on the wall. So in this case, I would say go for it. So they are integrated in this whole system, then it might be useful. But if it's a meeting room, a traditional meeting room with a projector on the wall and a triangle on the table, then for me this is the golden rule: one remote, all remote. We don't even book a meeting room.
Yeah. I mean, many years ago we discovered this when I was working with, in Allegro Group in Poland, and they were quite good. I mean, one of the best in engineering practices I've seen, and then but we had like 3 locations, and there was this like constant tension about, you know, people working from one location collaborating with other location, and we discovered this: we cannot work as, I mean, in groups in over one camera and laptop, because then we cannot actually participate, and one site is faster than people who work remotely, so all those peoples are, you know, on the worst places. They couldn't participate, and then we started experimenting with, okay, one remote, all remote, and then from that moment we felt like, oh, now it's painful for everyone. So now we have to, you know, discover better ways now how to do it. You know, at least the pace of working was much easier to, you know, to keep it same for everyone. But I was just wondering how you do it now, if it's still the same dynamics.
Well, but it doesn't count for every meeting. Eh? So like planning sessions, for example, we did with 3 sites, 3 meeting rooms booked. What I learned there and experienced and experimented with is like, we first go with a site with the least amount of teams. So like in Barco, like Noida in India, they went first. So they could have the first choice in selecting what kind of items they want to work with. Then we went to Romania and then to Kortrijk. So, and then afterwards we looked for, okay, do we need to shift things around because of possible dependencies, because of technical debt from the past and bad architecture. So to locate this at one site at least, and then from that moment on, people can work separate again. So there it's not less needed. But if you do refinement sessions or really collaborative coding, then that's different, of course.
One more question, if I may. I would like to go back to the beginning of this conversation, the whole meeting.
You were not here, you cannot go back to the beginning of the conversation.
Lies.
You were discussing some issues about Scrum, if you've seen any different smells of Scrum in different cultures and so on. My hypothesis is, and I'm wondering what's your experience, is the hypothesis is top managers, leaders, they are interested in having the benefits of agility, but they just unable to connect agility with organizational design. So that's why they put different practices, because they say, okay, I many times heard the sentence like, we used to be big, we used to do big projects, but now the world has changed. Now we need to learn how to do small things, experiment, be very close to the customers, users, learn, and so on. And then what I hear is like, oh, that's good. And then they completely don't buy cross-functionality. They don't think they often ask me, okay, what's the difference if you do this vertical or horizontal organization? I mean, same things. I mean, so what is your experience? Is it also that that's one problem I struggle with to explain, help them understand that organizational design is has an impact on your goal, on your way you operate as a company.
This was to me?
Yeah, I mean to all.
So back in my old days as an employee, it started as development team and a team lead, and then it's slowly growing upwards and sideways, which is painful. These days, to be honest, you always get contacted because of the FOMO. So people are not going agile because they want to; they go agile because of FOMO, fear of missing out. So, and it doesn't matter. So the manager that says yes is generally not the executive or not that high placed. It's some department lead or somebody that has the ownership or mandate about a couple of components, whatever. But and you know that as well. I try to go with at least 5, 6, 7 teams where we can go a bit more cross-functional within the boundaries of the mandate of that manager. So, and then I prepare very well, most probably for a couple of months to do a Kaikaku event. Make sure that people are volunteers. And if I have 5, 6, 7 teams with volunteers, and before that they worked in old structures, and suddenly we change it around in this Kaikaku event, and afterwards they worked in a less structure, more collaborative, really doing the empiricism as it is intended to in that context, they will generate more impact. And this more impact will come very early on. Compared to what they did before, they will suddenly feel the impact, meaning that somewhere in the food chain upwards or sideways, somebody will suddenly feel more impact, or they will see in their trend metrics that they are following up, or their KPIs, some kind of bump or dump in their trends. And they don't know where it came from. Then they ask questions. Trying to convince, this is something that people need to stop doing. We try to convince people. If there is no question, no curiosity to what you are doing, then you cannot convince anybody. So what do you need to look for, or what do you need to try to do is create curiosity. That's why with the manager that gives a mandate, I don't even bother about getting more mandate or anything else. Within that mandate, I want to have a significant piece of the puzzle so that I can prepare with volunteers, do a huge change with volunteers, so that after this change, the impact is coming very rapidly. And if I generate a rapid impact, somebody somewhere else will feel it or see it. And this person that sees it or feels it will come with a question. And that's the moment to continue your conversation.
Yeah, but it's still, for me, it sounds like it's already quite high first step to do. I mean, if you can't have an impact, I mean, they may say, okay, I understand, I don't believe, show me, prove it. That's your team, the group of analysts.
Yeah, and then you say bye-bye.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it won't be possible to show anything. But so yeah, I agree. I fully agree. And very often I just couldn't make any impact. That was my fault, I would say, to kick off, to start Scrum or multi-team Scrum that couldn't create impactful increment often. So that I couldn't actually show them it works. And then, discussing that, okay, because we can't go further because we have this huge dependency between this and that department. Can we, like, I don't know, find even a small domain where we will be a bit more closer to each other, more cross-functional, cross-component, and then we will see how this will work. It's often not possible. Then I can't show you.
Yeah, I mentioned this before as well. If I feel there's no way to generate some impact, then I don't even engage with the customer. And I really am honest. It's like, yeah, I think this is going to be agile theater and not really the real thing. So, and this is not my thing. So, but I have a couple of other people or other organizations I would recommend for this.
How often does this happen for you?
I think, well, these days, not that often anymore, but let's say about 7 years ago, very often. So 7 years ago, there's less customers of me that went on stage and all of that stuff. So you have less of a reputation. So people come to you, they see Agile Coach and Scrum, and it's like up, and everybody comes to you. And at that moment in time, I had to say lots of times, I don't think this is for me, because you don't really want Scrum or the impact that it should bring. But I know some other companies that will be most probably happy to help you. So, and then you get this reputation that you're a pain in the ass and that you don't want to work with people, but actually then you get to customers that really want it. And then those customers go on stage and they are not shy to say, we did it together with Jurgen or with co-learning in the past. So they're not shy. So, and then at a certain moment in time, like today, the people asking for my support are organizations that truly want something, or at least a manager within a bit misery that still wants something. So I don't get that many requests from people that want Agile theater, because I build up a reputation of generating impact. And people that don't want to have the impact don't come to me. Very simple. But this is, you know, to get there, I will be very honest here, Christophe and Robert, to get there, I have seen black snow. That means that financially I have suffered in the beginning because of not wanting to work, and then I wanted to wait for the right customer, and then it's like, fuck, we still have €1,000 on our bank account. Hopefully the right one comes over. So, but for some reason it always matched out. These days I have less of that misery, but this is building it for 7 years into this kind of dynamics.
Yeah.
It's system dynamics, just like anybody else. There are different variables. You choose to go for the impact. This variable will generate somewhere else, and then it starts rolling out.
What proves my hypothesis? Which, I mean, they're not interested. I mean, don't want to align goal with organizational design. They say, okay, prove it, and then if you can prove it, then they will be more interested and then ask questions.
And if they say to you, Christophe, prove it, here you have a space for a proof of concept, and it's not that bad if it fails. That's also where to say, no, I'm not interested. If you need to prove something, you need to prove something where it's high stakes and high visibility. Otherwise, it will never get the attention that you need to have to actually drive something impactful.
Because you know, you are, I think, you know, I have the same thoughts like for some time, like, you know, you are investing your time in company in that company where you are not aligned about, you know, the organization design goal, optimization goal. Like you are wasting time that you could invest in another company where you can, like, as Jurgen said, like, you know, have the impact, real impact. But
to be like, watch out, because none of the less adoptions that you heard about from my customers, actually none of the ones that I started with executive support, by the way. None of them. So we acquired bumps and dumps and impact, and we generated curiosity with those people, and at a certain moment in time it comes. So base company, the only reason that the C-level management was interested at a certain moment in time, because we generated bumps and dumps with the initial Kaikaku event with 5 teams only, by the way. So it's never fully aligned to an optimization goal, Sebastian. It means that at least one manager somewhere with a bit of a mandate has an idea what it could look like. And that this idea matches with all the rest of the peer managers and the layers on top of that, I don't even know at that moment in time.
Think like a politician. Like, you know, think like politician, because like I imagine, you know, politician think in that way, like, you know, like create like impact, create, you know, as you said, curiosity, you know, in higher ups. But then you have different politicians in Poland than here in Belgium. Here in Belgium, they're only busy with which seat do I have and how much money do I get. No, but you know, maybe in Poland it's different. Maybe there they want impact.
It's worse. It's worse.
It's worse, but
unfortunately, they do.
But they get
so I also didn't get it, Sebastian. don't compare this conversation. Don't involve politicians to this conversation, please. I mean, what's happening in Poland now in
I
politics?
like Bas's expression, and Bas said as well, you will never get rid about politics, but you have the choice to actually have destructive or constructive politics.
Oh, you stopped talking about politics when the American got back.
Yes.
What happened? What's with that?
On
Guess
purpose.
why?
It's all right. You can say it. Go ahead. You can make fun of us.
I think we can,
In case of the pot calling the kettle black.
Hi. Well, I don't know enough about your politics, so.
great Gantt diagram you have.
Thank you. That's my joke.
But Christoph, repeat your challenge. Maybe Richard also has some great ideas.
My challenge with
This and
leaders.
that, and so, but I let you explain.
So no, I don't know. I mean, the question I asked if what's your experience, and that because I have the hypothesis that the leaders, managers, the top managers, they don't then they don't see a line connection between what they would like to achieve the goal, even if they say use the wording exactly the same that will as kind of like definition of agility. Even if they say, oh, I would like to learn how to do small things, experiment often, be much closer to my customers, validate ideas, hypotheses, everything. Even if they say this, there is no connection. I mean, they have no connection with organizational design, and that's my challenge often, because they don't want to hear about the organizational design. Even if I explain, even if we do systems modeling, they say, oh, well, I don't believe this really, so just prove it. What's your experience, Richard? Do they have a connection?
You're muted, Richard.
My experience aligns with Craig's in his Larman's laws. Are you familiar with these? You know, and you're talking to people who, without knowing more, you're talking with people who are going to be challenged and have their life turned upside down if things, you know, change correctly. So they might be arguing about the small things and arguing about the definitions of things like that. If I'm understanding you correctly. I try not to motivate.
Could be the case. That could be the case, but
okay.
The question about, do you think? I don't think so. Sometimes yes, but sometimes I had the discussion with the C-level people, and they looked like they were curious about how we could achieve the way the change the way we operate, but they actually want to try different strategies, different techniques, practices. There was no connection between the adaptiveness, or at least how they described this, and what we call organizational design, cross-functional, cross-component teams. They say, I mean, their hypothesis was there must be many different ways to do it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yes. And again, I'm a Scrum person. So when you're talking to me about agility, I'm thinking of Scrum, and Scrum is a framework within which to try these different experiments. So let's agree on some kind of an empirical framework where we will try something and then see if it worked or not worked, and then, you know, get rid of it or try something new or keep it. As far as what experiments they try, ideally, I'd like for the team to come up with those on their own, the teams. But if the managers or the executives want to cram down some things, I mean, you know, who are we to say no to the boss? But all of us can agree that's probably not healthy. So if you're saying like the bosses want, you know, you can do what you want at the team levels, but what we really require, you know, upfront estimates, you know, and compare those with actuals. that's an experiment we want you to try. I'm like, part of me says, just say no, you know, and stick to your guns, but they're the bosses and it's kind of hard to do that. So maybe you have good Scrum masters that can do their best to explain to them how that's, you know, going to be friction towards their journey to agility. But in the short game, maybe you just do it, you know, and play their games.
Okay, so I give you an example, all of you. When I was having a talk, the first meeting with the CEO of the company that Sebastian you're working with, the CEO, the first sentence he said when he wanted to invite me, and he wanted to, you know, grab my hand, and instead of say hello, he said, "We are pretty agile." That was the beginning of the, you know, sentence, and I was like, what do they mean?
Well, they obviously knew why you were there, right?
I mean, it was just interesting I mean, this is what Sebastian you said, that maybe the understanding of that the business may claim that we are quite flexible because I give an orders and they follow.
He saw you entering the parking lot with your nice looking BMW with the license plate Agile 007. So this is where he said it's pretty agile.
Agile 007.
My car was agile before the transformation of BMW. I just call it agile.
That is a weird way to greet somebody. Hi, I'm Richard, and I really, really am good at eating meatballs. You know, it's like, I don't even know the context, but here I am bragging about something. Yes, what is it? Full stack developer. Perfect.
Stack.
I'm going to use that one. That's good. So you've heard my definition of full stack developer, Jurgen. Full stack developer. It's a developer who's able to introduce technical debt at all the layers. Then you can call yourself a full stack developer. So Christoph, where did you leave things? Are you involved with that company still, or not so much?
I decided to join a bank, and it's a bit more interesting dynamics. I just work with two teams. And what's happening above those teams, I have no idea. A few days ago, I've seen the PowerPoint someone did, and there is some kind of like, some managers decided to create some kind of a group of agile transformation, something, whatever, I don't know. I don't even know those people, and I'm the only one who do this experiment with Scrum, but probably. They prepare to be a part of success. Or if there will be a failure, they will just delete the PowerPoint and I will be alone.
Christophe, you know this is being recorded, and Sebastian said to put it on YouTube.
Yes.
Nice.
Maybe it's a good time to object to the YouTube.
We can make it unlisted.
The question.
Please cut this part. But anyway, no. It's I mean, because I, for the first time in my consultant career, I have very low expectations, which already made me feel very happy, and I have a time for experimentation, discussions. The goal of the initiative is to start agile project. So I started, and I reached a goal already at the beginning. So now we have space to that was the goal of the in a formal document. So we started, and fine. Now we have a space to experiment. There are volunteers. We are cross-functional, and there is only one system, one component. Very narrow definition of a product, but I guess there is a lot of fun, discovery, completely different than they are used to. Well, yeah, I think it's going to be at least interesting for people, and maybe it's going to spread to other parts of the bank someday. I don't know.
Nice.
I just decided to stay with this one, or actually 2 teams, and that's it. And it's fun.
I need to leave, everyone. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you again. Scrum on.
Yeah, nice to see you as well. Thanks.
So I think we can probably wrap it up.
Yeah, we started with actual discussion around the talk that we wanted to, but it kind of spiraled off as it tends to. But that might be okay. We'll have to evaluate.
As it always happens.
Yeah.
Such discussions.
Yeah. So we're gonna post it on the candidate trainers group. And see feedback and how much people will view it. Probably, you know, Jurgen, what was your experience? Maybe you can answer us.
I had an interesting evening, so and some good laughs, and it's good to see Christoph back and Robert and you and Jacek, and actually meet Richard for once. So, well, actually I've met him many times, but not really talked to him. So no, this was okay, and I'm actually happy with a small group like this. So it's a lot easier to have conversations than with bigger groups. So it's good, no? And everybody could contribute, and everybody came with some story. So this is something I also like. No? Good stuff.
Yeah. So bye. See you next time, I hope.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. See you around.
See you
Bye.
guys.